Hello everyone. Welcome to Soap Family for You. Claire and Kyle cross paths with Nate and Audra, and Victoria reunites with her family in the method house. Victoria tells her son that Victor has texted and wants them all to meet at the main house. Claire wants to meet with Kyle first. Her mama thinks she should see the family first, but Claire doesn't see what difference a many hours could make. Victoria is sure that Victor will be dissatisfied by this. It's times like these that he thinks they need each other the most. Claire thinks that if he cares about family, he'll understand she needs to see Kyle. She doesn't watch what Victoria tells Victor. She's not changing her mind. Is Victor's vendetta finished? Kyle, Jack, and Diane are relieved to be back in the Abbott mansion. Diane and Kyle can hardly stay to see Harrison. He reminds her that his little steps may not be as quiet as she remembers. Diane hates that her long-awaited honeymoon was derailed, but Jack promises her it can be tallied. Diane still can't make sense of what the point of all of this was. Her hubby points out that Kane no way truly revealed his hand. That means none of them should get too comfortable. Kyle wishes they could have a day without talking about Kane and the trip from hell. They suppose of how devastated Amy and Chance's families must be. Diane suggests they go to society for breakfast. Kyle needs to bow out to see Claire. He hates that he was there for her. After Kyle leaves, Diane tells Jack she doubts Claire will be happy to find out what happened between Kyle and Audra, not to mention Victor's part in it. That's sure to put a mute on the reunion. Jack says their son did the right thing in exposing Audra and Victor's dirty little plot, but his woman worries that Kyle went to the limit and that wouldn't sit well with Claire. When she compares this to what Jack did to save Nikki, he says he's confident Claire will understand what Kyle did. Diane hopes so, but covetousness is insidious, and it's asking a lot to look once Kyle getting so near to a former nut. The only thing they can hope for is that Kane's mysterious docket will have Victor distracted, but they know it's not in Victor's DNA to let anything go. The Newmans reunite. Nick, his parents, and Sharon arrive at the new estate, happy to be down from the maze. Nick feels nearly completely healthy, but notices Sharon has been quiet. She admits she's and stop allowing about Chance. He was special and so kind and case with her. Nick says Summer and Abby were eviscerated by news of his death. Victor thanks the Brace for coming with them from the field. He's formally texted the rest of the family to come over. Nikki is surprised that he thinks the trouble from Kane is that imminent. Nick agrees that it is. Victor adds that what's indeed more important right now is to support Claire and Victoria. They must need their family further than anything. Nick is eager to see his family. They weren't there when she demanded them. Victoria arrives and embraces her parents. She tells them how glad she's to see them. She's no way been so agonized and empty in her life. It would have been too important to lose one of them as well. Victor admits that Cole was a good man and a good father. He wishes he'd had the chance to tell him that. His son is sure Cole would be glad to hear that wherever he is. Nikki is convinced Cole tasted it. Victor changed his mind about him when he realized how important he loved Victoria and Claire. Nick asks his family for a clinch and wishes he'd been there to help. She admits she could have used a shoulder and tells him he is to stay by her side in the future. His days of fighting guards in European countries are over. Nate and Audra catch up. Nate arrives outside of society and peers in to see Audra sitting alone. When he enters, she rushes over and welcomes him with a clinch. He wanted to meet her at the field, but he's been spread thin. All she's wanted was for him to hold her. She still can't believe what happened to Damien and assures him she's there for him and Amy. Going to Nice was a huge mistake, she says. Nate regrets not going. It makes him sick that he wasn't there with his family in his last days. He can't believe Damien is gone just as they were erecting a real relationship. Audra wishes they'd each stayed home, but asks Nate not to torture himself. They bandy how poorly Amy is handling her son's death, as Nate explains she shut down. Breaking the news was the hardest thing he's ever done. At first, it was denial, also fury, and now she's withdrawn. She was on a charge to reconnect with her son. Now her purpose is gone. Nate will take care of her and has to help her transport the remains. Audra asks how she can help. Nate says holding her is enough. He's formally taken care of all the arrangements for his family, since Amy couldn't face them. Nate explains that he'd the office for his family at Winters all set up and indeed lined up a perfect design for him to forefront. He nearly got them Bears season tickets, but put it off so they could elect tickets together. Nate was really looking forward to getting to know his family. Now he's gone. Jack and Diane walk into society and incontinently spot Nate and Audra. She complains that they see and feel to avoid that woman. Jack thinks they should at least pay condolences to Nate. She wonders if he knows what his so-called gal has been over to. Jack reminds her he's in mourning, so she agrees to hold her lingo. They walk over to the table and tell Nate how sorry they're about what happened to his family. Audra says it was a shocking and crazy trip from beginning to end. Seesawing, Diane says it was full of disturbing surprises. Audra glares at her. Jack and Diane get a table. The food may not be as good as in France, but they're happy to be home and in the real world. They talk about getting back to work, and he's sure Diane is dissatisfied their perfect honeymoon didn't be. Still, she has made them a design, so as soon as the timing is right, nothing will stand in their way. Diane thinks they need to stay close while the Audra and Kyle mess is still playing out. Jack holds out stopgap that Kane may distract Victor from his focus on their son. However, he'd indeed platoon up with Kane. If he allowed it would help Claire and Kyle. However, so much the better. If it took Victor down a many notches in the process. Diane is taken suddenly to hear that. Perhaps commodity positive could come out of their trip? Will Kyle tell Claire the truth? When Kyle meets with Claire in Chancellor's Park, she throws her arms around him. They talk about how frustrating it was to be suitable to hear each other's voices. He'd have been on the coming spurt home if he'd known what was passing with her pater. Claire understands he was trapped. She says she wants to hear all about it. Kyle's not sure she does. He warns this isn't the stylish time to bandy it, and he'd rather talk about how he can help her. Kyle holds Claire again and says he wishes he could do it ever. Her mind is still contending about all that's happened. Kyle promises he'll partake the details of his trip latterly. Claire admits that seeing him is each she wants right now. Plus, she wanted to be prepared in case there's commodity she needs to know about where he now stands with her forefather. Shaking his head, Kyle says that's the least of their enterprises. She asks about the offer he made to Victor, and Kyle says none of that matters right now. Claire senses commodity is wrong. Have effects come worse? He claims they slightly crossed paths as Victor was substantially concentrated on Kane. Audra and Nate show up. The four of them do some awkward salutes and condolences. They're all glad they had someone to lean on. Before Audra can lead Nate down, Kyle asks her about Vibrante's lapses. Nate wonders what that means. Audra tells him it's nothing to worry about, and the extremity has been prevented. Kyle prods her about her investor having alternate studies, but she insists they're fine and tells him moment isn't the day to push. Once Kyle and Claire walk out, Nate asks Audra what that was about. She complains that Kyle is always taking lodgings at her, while he was handed a thriving cosmetics business by his daddy. Nate is confused about why the abbot cares, and she claims it's pride. When Nate asks if Victor is considering pulling his backing, she says he hasn't said anything about it, and she doesn't want to bother him while his family is mourning. She insists Kyle is just being a brat. Nate finds that odd after all that's happened. Smiling, she urges him to forget about Kyle and kisses him. Nate looks upset. Claire turns to her family for support back at the new estate. Victor asks Victoria how Claire is managing. She explains her son is dealing with a lot of feelings right now, but she promised to stop by. Anxious to see her, Victor suppositions she went to see the Abbotts before her own family. Victoria assures them her son will be there soon. She asks for further details about Nice, but her pater won't drop Claire's absence. Nick says it makes sense that she wants to be assured by her swain. Nikki asks her hubby not to blow this out of proportion. He groans that Claire's made it clear where her proceedances are. Victoria reminds her father that the bottom just dropped out of her life. He needs to stop going after her son. He argues he's only looking out for Claire. Nikki and Nick prompt him to let this go. Victor is still concerned about her trust in Kyle. Victoria pleads with him to drop the enmity while they're saying goodbye to Cole. Claire arrives and rushes straight into Victor's arms. She hugs Nikki coming, and Nick tells her they're each back for anything she needs. Victoria explains that it was her son who claimed on staying until they were each back for the keepsake. Victor promises they will see them through this and hugs his son again. Sharon heads for the door and tells Nick it feels like she should leave him with his family. He insists they all want her there. She's still part of the family. Sharon says they've a lot to bandy about what happened on the trip. Are we ever going to talk about that kiss? She asks. Nick says they could talk about it or stay to see if it happens again. They return to the others and talk to Claire about how hard it's to say goodbye. Nikki tells her that they can get through anything as a family. Victor reminds them all that they're facing some delicate problems, but if they stick together, they shall prevail. They each nod to him. Victor is like a canine with a bone. Kyle admits he ran into Nate with Audra and wanted to tell him what happened, but he couldn't, given Nate's recent derangement. Audra is all bravado and acting like nothing happened. Jack is sure she'll be out for revenge. Jack warns Kyle that Audra will want vengeance. Kyle drops in at Society to join his parents for breakfast. He tells them how hard losing Cole has been on Claire. Given the state she's in, he didn't suppose it was the time to inform her of Victor's conspiracy with Audra, adding that it doesn't look like Victor has ended his business relationship with Audra yet. He wonders if the mustache is eventually coming around to accepting that this relationship with Claire is real. His parents find that hard to believe.